Hey guys, I thought I'd go over Chess the Gathering for this video because I've changed a lot of the rules, and I would really call this a separate version because it's so different. The original version I really focused on making the game fast and dramatic, and for this version I focused on making the game more tactical and strategic. So a little bit more deterministic, I suppose. So I don't know if it's better or worse, but it's certainly different. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of go over the new rules and compare them with the old rules, and you guys can tell me what you think. And maybe it's a different version, maybe it's the new version. So let's get going. So in the previous rules, a caster had to have line of sight on a square in order to cast a creature there. That hasn't changed. However, what you didn't need line of sight for was to cast a swamp or wall or any other spell. Those you could put willy-nilly wherever you wanted. And so the thing that happened that I think frustrated players is that it was very difficult to strategize. So here the blue army has two queens that are defending each other, and they're fairly safe from red. But what happens is that red comes in here, kills that queen, and then simply throws down a swamp. And now he doesn't have to worry about retaliation from the blue army. And this is frustrating for blue because they couldn't have necessarily predicted that this would happen. Or if they could have, there's just so many possibilities. It's just very difficult. So now what we do is to make things a little bit more consistent and easier to predict. What we do is we make it so that everything you cast has to be within sight of a spellcaster. So the same move could have happened if red had their spellcaster here and they were still able to cast that swamp. But the thing that's better about this from a tactic standpoint is that not only did red have to have this in correct position to place this swamp, so they sort of earned it in a way, but then blue, seeing that the red caster was there, might have a heads up that this is a legitimate move that might be coming. So again, adding a little bit to the tactics of the game. What this also does is it slows it down a little bit because now you really worry about where your casters are and where their vision is. However, it's kind of cool because it creates a second layer of strategy. So it's not only where your pieces are, but it's what your casters can see. So keeping with the theme of allowing for a little bit more strategy, we've taken the player's hand and we've made them play it exposed. What this does is it makes it so that when you're trying to plan a move ahead, before the frustration was without knowing what was in their hand, when you would make moves, you would just kind of have no idea what to expect, and it was very difficult to think like 2 or 3 moves ahead, like one might want to do to increase the strategy of the game. So now with the hand exposed, you at least know one of 3 possibilities that they could at least cast next turn. Now, of course, there can still be a lot of surprises. Just like in chess, there could be a very interesting move, or you might underestimate like what they could do with this combination of things. But it makes things a little bit more strategic. We also have a common hand now that you draw from and you replenish from the deck, and that's kind of fun because now you can kind of see 2 moves ahead, though they can always, if they don't like what's in here, draw from this deck, and then you kind of don't know. But it also kind of creates this sort of hate drafting that you can have, where if you see this thing that they want, you can take it from them, and or if you're drawing a card and then have to discard down, you have to throw one of your favorite cards into this common area that they might be able to grab. So again, that increases kind of some interaction, which I really like. However, of course, the drawback being that you don't have that contained hand and you throw down the card that, makes a big difference that they weren't expecting. So now let's talk about mana. It used to be that you would get 1 mana per turn for every piece you had on the board, including your twins. And what this did was it was a very rich get richer kind of thing. I liked it because it made the games faster. If one army was growing stronger than the other, it would generally slip. And then also, I like the idea of your economy being your pieces, so that it made it so that you would bring out bishops even though they're a weaker character just to get the extra mana. And it would encourage you to attack the other players' pieces, because that not only hurt them because they had 1 less piece, but their economy was hurt as well because they got 1 less mana per turn. The detriment with this was that if someone got lucky with their opening hand, was able to get out a bishop really fast, their economy started faster than the other player. I do think there was something really good about this in the game generally, because there was so much mana being accrued. Also, just there was no cap on mana until 10, and that just allowed you to cast so many things. So the way that the game was generally played was it would be like, I throw you in check, and there's no way you can get out of it. And then because you had so many spells, you were able to get out of check and throw me in check. And the games were very dramatic, which was good, but it was the swings were just wild, and it just made the game seem a little bit arbitrary. So now what we've done is I still like the idea of having a plus and a minus, having a risk and reward kind of thing. So now what you do is you cast another caster. So now you would have 3 mana per turn. However, you've added a liability. Now, if any of these 3 pieces die, you lose the game. And as we've seen when we've played, adding an extra caster, really, they can wreak havoc on you if they get a queen in here. And you've got 3 different pieces that they can kind of fork and do things with. So I really like that kind of double-edged sword. What I've done is I've made it so that in order to cast a caster, that you can always draw that card from this pile, which is always there. So it's not like you just randomly draw out a bunch of casters and it gave you an advantage. And it costs a little bit more so that you can't just do it right away. I find that it's really interesting because on smaller boards, it's a really bad idea because if we were just playing on this 8x8, having that extra liability is really bad. On a board like this, where there's a pinch point, if you could set your troops up a little bit to kind of start to block vision and, you know, make it so that you're safe over here, then all of a sudden casting extra casters is really useful because you'll get the extra mana. I've also found that casting a caster in the other person's space is this kind of interesting move because now you have vision in their board, and so you can cast all over the place in here, which is really dangerous for them, but you have a liability that's sitting there. So it seems like it's a pretty good trade-off. The other thing I did was I capped mana at 6 because the queen costs 6 to get her out, and so when you cap mana at 6, because you accrue mana every turn, it carries over. When it was capped at 10 before, you were just able to throw so much stuff out that I felt like cards lost their value, and moving pieces generally happen less because you could just cast things. Like, why bother moving when you can cast so much stuff? But now with the cap, all of a sudden you spend some turns not casting so that you can build up, and what that means is that you're moving the pieces more and the game feels more dynamic, or at least, yeah, it feels like it's not just cast heavy, it's also movement based. So that's pretty much the gist of this new rule set. As you can see, we're exposing more information so that so that each player knows more about what's going on, and that increases, I feel, some of the strategy and tactics you can employ. It also slows down the game a little bit and makes the swings a little bit less. So that could be a good thing or a bad thing, and I'd love to hear from you guys. I know you can't play it because we haven't updated the digital version with this new mode, but if you guys from seeing this have any opinions, I'd love to hear it. Put it in the comments. And otherwise, I will see you guys next time for whatever crazy video I decide to make. Thanks for watching.